Welcome to Containerized Conversations, where we try to containerize our conversation. I'm Jessica Caffarelli.
And I'm Josh Warhurst. Thanks for tuning in as we dive into some of our favorite topics, one containerized thought at a time.
Welcome to the 7 Habits Book Club. So, Habit 7, Josh.
Sharpen the saw.
The last habit.
Whoa.
I really want to ask you your takes on the whole book, but let's save it for the next episode. We'll stay focused on Habit 7 for now. Sharpen the Saw, Principles of Balanced Self-Renewal. What did you think of it?
I feel like if there's going to be a single take on what this habit means, right, in a couple words, it's that we have to invest in ourselves.
Yeah.
Right? At the end of the day, you know, it's funny. The first 3 habits are all about building yourself up.
Yep.
And then
the interpersonal, I think he calls it, right?
Independent habits.
Independent
right?
habits,
to become independent. And then interdependent are habits 4, 5, and 6, which is like extending how we interact
with
others.
Other people. So,
yeah. And then habit 7 is all about bettering ourselves and really like through essentially improving all the trying to get better at all the habits at every single time, right? So I think it's interesting. He starts this off on page 342 with basically saying that everything is physical, mental, social, or spiritual, right? Which I think he did have a bit of a stretch in some of his examples, but okay. You know,
I want us to go through. Yeah, I want us to go through each one and use kind of an example from our own, like personal, of how we would, if we haven't already, kind of use it. Because, like, for me, like example, one of them is spiritual, and like I'm not a religious person, but I have some examples of how I refresh spiritually. So I think I want to go through those. But before we get to it, he starts off the chapter with one of my favorite stories I use all the time. So I would be remorsed if I didn't at least mention it and tell you the story once again, you know, because you've heard me tell you this story so many times.
It's a good story.
But the story is, suppose you were to come upon someone in the woods working feverishly to saw down a tree. What are you doing? You ask. Can't you see? Comes the impatient reply. I'm sawing down this tree. You look exhausted, you exclaim. How long have you been at it? Over 5 hours, he returns, and I'm beat. This is hard work. Well, why don't you take a break for a few minutes and sharpen the saw? You inquire. I'm sure it would go a lot faster. I don't have time to sharpen the saw, the man says emphatically. I'm busy sawing.
Classic.
So what's actually really funny, right? And I've actually forgot about this habit. Completely forgot about this habit, except this story. That's how much effect this story has had on me. But what's funny is I've used this habit in this story as an example to convince people to automate things.
Mm-hmm.
In our line of work, in DevOps or full stack, platform engineering, what have you, it's really important to automate your tasks, because if you don't, you'll get severely inundated by quadrant 1 activities, and you'll never be able to do the sharpening, what I would have assumed is sharpening the axe or sharpening the saw activities, and get yourself out of this firefighter mode until you start doing it. Stop sawing the tree down, i.e. stop doing that manual work. And even though that stuff's going to get behind for a second, just stop, let it get behind for a couple seconds so you can actually focus on automating it. And then as you automate more and more things, you'll find you have more and more time, and you'll actually be able to cut down more trees. I've been using that story wrong, though, after reading this book again, right? He actually doesn't use that as an example to get out of quadrant 1 work. He uses it as an example to sharpen, your own mentality and become sharper to actually embody the rest of the habits. So I find that interesting. I'm still going to use that story to convince people to automate, but I've been using it out of context all these years.
I mean, it's I remember hearing something in okay, so I play the board game Go, right? I
Yeah.
don't play it that often anymore, but I used to be really into it. And there's this concept that any move you play should accomplish two things, right? So
Yeah.
it's really easy for a move to accomplish one thing, right? You could think
Yeah.
of this in terms of chess or any other game, really, right?
Yeah.
But it's really important that your moves accomplish one thing,
Yeah.
right? So if you're doing the chess metaphor, because everybody's played chess, right?
Yeah.
Taking a piece is accomplishing one thing. That's probably a really
Yeah.
good thing. But if you
Yeah.
take a piece and then you also pressure another location,
Mm. Yeah.
that's a good move,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Taking the
Yeah.
piece is an okay move, right?
Yeah.
But accomplishing two things is a good move. I think that this story is a great story. It's not just a
Yeah.
good story, it's a great story because
Yeah.
it can apply to multiple situations,
That's
right?
true. Yeah.
He is talking about, yes, you need to like go and improve yourself, but it can also be used as a metaphor for getting out of quadrant one,
Yeah,
right?
that's true. That's true.
Not
Yeah.
working on the immediately important thing of sawing down the tree,
Yeah.
but updating our tools, right? Making it so that it's easier to continue to saw down trees,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and Sean in the later section, I don't want to jump too far ahead, right?
Mm.
But he
Mm.
talks about how burnout's a problem
Yeah.
and how this story is also a story against burnout, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
If you do the things like this, like you don't sharpen the axe, right? You
Yeah.
don't sharpen the saw,
Yeah.
you're leading towards burnout. And that ultimately leads to worse habits overall. Like, this is a good
Yeah.
story.
Yeah.
It
Yeah. Yeah.
has
Yeah.
so many different
Yeah.
applications.
Yeah, so to use the story correctly, at least
Correctly, yeah.
in
In
context with habit 7, the idea is that you're supposed to be sharpening your saw, which is doing these 4 renewal processes in a balanced manner so that your saw is sharpened so that when you go and execute upon the other habits, you can do it in a more effective way.
Mhm.
So, as you mentioned, the 4 dimensions mentioned in the book is physical, mental, social, emotional, and spiritual. And like you said, he gives some like kind of bad examples in here sometimes. So that, which is why I really want to go through some of them and just mention like things that we either do or maybe we can try doing in the future to give like our listeners maybe an example. And so I'm going to start on the most boring one, which is physical.
Sure.
Right. So, because I think that's kind of the obvious one. So, physical is just, go work out and he kind of describes in the book if your job isn't necessarily a physical job, then you don't necessarily need to be in like an athlete, but maybe you should do calisthenics, the basics.
Yep.
And eat right and I do agree that like maybe riding a bike or even going on a hike can release a lot of stress. And I think that's where the physical comes in, especially for people like us in our industries. When I don't like for me, when I get out of work, if I don't do any sort of physical activity, I am so mentally exhausted that I just end up sitting in front of the TV and vegging. And
Yep.
it's because like I'm physically not exhausted, but I'm so mentally exhausted that if I don't try to balance my physical body between the mental and physical, I end up just like not doing anything and it makes things even worse.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's like so important, especially for people like us, to find some sort of activity that we enjoy that can release that stress, even if it is just like basic body exercises or calisthenics to improve mobility.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
It's funny. Habit, when he talks about exercise, I'm like, that was the first time in the book, I'm like, now there's a habit. 7 habits of
That's that
highly
I could get
effective
on board with
people.
that.
Yeah. 7 habits.
Yeah,
Work out. Sure, I can do that.
yeah,
Um, I was
yeah,
waiting for this habit. Come on. Um, but but the fact is, physical activities, especially when you're doing desk jobs, like a lot of
yeah,
DevOps is desk work, right?
yeah,
It's sitting at a desk. It's at your computer, right? It's
yeah,
clicking away on your keyboard.
yeah,
Um, but the fact is that there are so many other ways to like stay active. I think a lot of people who have started in this field, the reasons that they like their memories of working in server rooms and stuff
yeah, yeah.
is
Oh
because it
yeah,
is kind of physical. right?
Yeah, I
You're
miss it. I miss it
walking
so bad.
around your
Yeah.
the rack and stack, like pulling
You're
a server
yeah.
out and putting it back
It's
in. It's a very
freezing cold in
physical.
there. You're trying to troubleshoot on a KVM. You're like, "I really hope this fixes it 'cause I wanna get out of here."
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that ends up being a physical
Yeah.
activity,
Yeah.
right? And I think a
Yeah.
lot of people, when they've spent their entire career doing what ends up being mostly mental activities,
Yeah.
the physical activity of it, that just pulling a server out and putting it back in, right, or putting a
Yeah.
new one in,
Yeah.
that can be a really satisfying
Yeah.
uh thing, right?
Yeah.
I think exercise as a habit is really hard to do. I think a lot of
Yeah.
people struggle with it.
Yeah. Well, and he chastises those people because they say they don't have time. But
And
one of the stories that's mentioned later on is, well, you don't say you don't have time not to get gas to not get gas, do you?
exactly,
Like,
exactly right. I'm
it's the
too
same
busy
idea.
driving. I can't get gas,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You
Fair,
know,
fair.
because
But
what he says is it's 30 minutes a day. You don't have time for 30 minutes a day. Or I think he even says 30 minutes every day, every other day.
yeah,
But
I'm a big believer in making exercise, making these things that you struggle to do, just
yeah.
like part of your activity or
Yeah.
part of your day, right?
Yeah.
Not like, oh, I have to make some time to exercise, right?
Yeah.
Right now I live close enough where my daughter, I can bring her to school in a
Mm,
stroller, right?
yeah.
It's a
Perfect.
15-minute walk each way,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I do that before I start work.
Yeah.
And
That's such a good idea.
oh my gosh,
Yeah.
just like, yes, I could put her in the car and it would be a
Yeah.
2-minute drive to the place,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But putting her in the stroller, getting that walk out, right?
Yeah.
She enters school a lot
Yeah.
pretty calm. She loves being outside.
Yeah.
I finish the walk feeling like I did something to
Yeah.
start the day.
Yeah.
It feels really good. You drive somewhere in the beginning of the day, you don't feel like you accomplished anything. You walk for 30
Wait,
minutes.
no, but Josh, you're blowing my mind right now because I'm going to use something else you just said early on.
Sure.
Because you can also, if you're walking your daughter or strollering your daughter to school, you're hitting two things with one stone. You're doing exactly what you said because that's physical and that's the social emotional portion
Mhm.
of it too. So that's why that activity is so strong. You're doing two for one. That's
And it is true.
that's
We
a real
do.
that's the tip. That is your hot tip for this. Find some sort of activity that's a renewal of multiple of these.
Mhm.
Try to hit two for one. I I love it.
And honestly, the 2 for 1, like, on the stroller thing, like, it is nice, like, walking through the neighborhood, seeing
Yeah.
squirrels and, like,
Yeah.
pointing out, "Oh, look at the turkey," right? And
Yeah.
it becomes
Yeah.
like a activity that we're doing together.
Yeah.
But
That's amazing. You blew
even
my mind.
even when I do exercise, right,
Yeah.
I like running, right? That's my
Yeah.
one exercise, and I don't do it too often. I probably run, like, once every 2 weeks, right? Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's not very common that I do it.
Yeah.
Um, but what I do is I listen to podcasts, and it's one of the times that
There
I
we go.
actually do listen to podcasts
Yeah.
because I don't like I have a remote job now, so I don't have a commute.
Yeah.
And so I'm looking forward to catching up on my podcasts,
Yeah.
and I'm like, "Oh, I'll
Yeah.
just do it when I run."
Yeah.
And
Man.
so I'm looking forward to run, not because I'm looking forward to actually just getting out there and
Yeah.
running, but because
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to, like, listening to the podcasts.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah. No,
so again,
I really like it. I like that. That's
that's
awesome.
kind of like mental and physical at the
Yeah.
same time, or maybe that's a spiritual thing. I don't know. That's
The
a
the
that's a
podcast
question.
thing, it depends on if it's self-help, right? Because that could be spiritual.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
it is mental. I mean, it is kind of reading and listening. And so, okay, so you touched on a couple of things. For me, my social emotional is this podcast. That's one example that I have sharpened my saw with this,
Yep.
having this to socialize with you, especially with me having a new fully remote job where maybe my socialization has gone down quite a bit. So this podcast was a remedy for myself for that. That would help me. I knew my balance was missing on that social emotional perspective. So
Mhm.
that this podcast, I thank you for helping me sharpen my saw and joining me.
And again, I feel like it's a mental activity too, right?
Yeah, that's
By
true.
doing this, yes,
Yeah,
we're communicating,
yeah,
we're having a good time, we're building this
yeah,
relationship, which I really enjoy. But
yeah.
it's also a mental
Forced
thing.
ourselves to read the book too. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, you for
Yeah.
this is a quadrant 2 activity. I never would have
I
read this book if
I'm
it
gonna
weren't
use
for this
something later
podcast.
on in the book. I what does he call it? A scripter? I scripted you into reading this, right? Is that
Oh, you
how he
totally
calls it?
did. I don't know.
Right? Is that let me get to the paragraph. I am a positive scripter and affirmer of other people. That's what I did with you for this book. Yeah. It's really interesting. Yeah. So these are
And
really great examples of sharpening the saw, right?
this this is actually one of those things, like us recording this podcast. I really hope that other people gain things from this
Yeah.
podcast.
Yeah.
I've had feedback that people have gained stuff from this
Yeah.
podcast, and that's
Yeah.
really nice to hear. But
Yeah.
I'm doing this for me, right?
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
doing this because I enjoy talking to you. I do this because I enjoy the mental exercises, the reading the books, and I really hope that we can also pass this forward, right?
Oh yeah.
We can,
Yeah.
if you will,
Well, and
help
that's
other
the other
people.
really interesting part because I do use this as almost like a video journal of our conversations too. Like when I go back and edit it, I get reminded of so many different nuances of our conversation that I might not have like fully comprehended before too. So it's like
Mm.
so interesting to go back. So yeah, no, I totally agree.
On the topic of mental, this is about willpower, but something that I kind of want to touch on. So on 345, he has the story about a bodybuilder, right? And he says nature rebuilds the fiber stronger after pushing past
Oh
the
yeah,
previous limit, right?
yeah,
And he says the same. So like when you're doing exercise, you really have to strain. You have to keep going further than
yeah,
what you could do before to actually build the limit. Because if the fiber isn't getting broken,
yeah,
like it's only when it breaks and rebuilds that it actually rebuilds stronger.
yeah.
And he said the same principle works with emotional muscles as well, such as patience.
Mm, yeah,
When you push your patience past the previous limit, you get
yeah,
more patient.
yeah,
You kind of realize that, oh, that wasn't a limit. That was just
yeah.
a stepping stone towards further ability. And it is funny, like,
That's
I've had
funny.
people say, like, how can you possibly be so patient in this
Yeah,
situation? How
yeah,
does this not annoy you? It's like,
yeah.
well, I've previously been much more annoyed.
I've been so
And
annoyed in my past. This is nothing.
this is nothing. This is nothing.
This
But
is like a 5 pound weight.
if you realize every moment that ends up being a pain, you think of this as exercise too.
Yeah.
Oh, this is really strenuous.
Yeah.
Well, that means the next time you do it, it won't be as strenuous. If you're
Yeah.
at work and you're really struggling, your brain is hurting at the end
Yeah.
of the day,
Yeah.
that's building that muscle, if you will, right?
Yeah. No, he actually says something that made me laugh so hard when I read it in this exercise section, which was if it's raining outside, still go running. You get a chance to both build yourself and your willpower.
Yeah.
I'm like, that is so looking on the positive side of things.
What's so funny is that actually happened to me this year, right?
Yeah.
There was a friend of mine said, "Hey, you want to go running?" Right? And I was like, "Yeah,
Yeah.
sure." When the day came, it was raining that morning. And I was like, I don't know if I should go running. It's raining."
Yeah.
And he said, "Well, okay, but I'll be there if you wanna show up." And I was like, "Oh, if you're gonna be there, I guess I'll go." And it ended up being great because all that rain actually made
Yeah.
it easier to exercise, and it was a
Yeah.
fun experience,
Yeah.
and I was really glad to have gone out when it was raining.
I could see that.
It was almost better that it was raining, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
And it made me more excited to run because once you run in the rain, you're like, "Oh, I could do that
I could just run anytime now.
anytime." That would yeah,
In the
exactly.
snow. Okay, so and then now on to spiritual.
Mm,
Now, because I do think it's really important to balance all these, right?
yep.
If you have a mental job, you should definitely do some physical stuff to balance out your mental and physical, your social, emotional. If you're in work from home, try to find ways to be more social, but spiritual. If you're not a religious person, what does spiritual mean? And I have a
Mm,
perfect example, at least for myself. I love taking bathtubs or hot tubs.
Hmm.
And especially a hot tub outside at night when the stars are out, that is spiritual to me. I feel like I can just feel the weight lifting from my soul. Like when I'm out there, you can hear the crickets, like you're looking at the stars, you're sitting in a hot tub. You want to talk about like meditation or anything like that, man. Now that is a spiritual movement for me, and that is refreshing. That is refreshing.
That's actually really interesting because it's almost the opposite of where I'm coming from. So
Okay.
I I believe in meditation always,
Okay.
right? I think that people should always be trying to kind of clean their mind, recognize where you are in the world
Yeah.
and whatnot.
Yeah.
I feel like the most spiritual moments happen to me. And again, like you, I'm not religious, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I celebrate Christmas as a day to get gifts.
Yeah.
Um, I celebrate Easter to
Yeah.
find where the bunny hid the eggs, right? Like I'm not
Yeah.
a very spiritual person, right? In maybe the religious sense, but
Yeah.
I love those moments where I feel incredibly small in the universe,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Where I feel like you realize like, oh, we humans exist on as tiny specks in the
Yeah.
timeline in the
Yeah.
giant vastness of the universe,
Yeah.
and nothing that we do matters, right? And I love that feeling because I think it frees me up mentally and physically to
Uh-huh.
do the things that I want to do in life.
Mm. Mhm.
Um, I understand other people, they want those moments of spirituality to give them purpose, right?
Yeah.
To give them uh like a thing to drive towards.
Yeah. Yeah.
And for me, it really just is a way of removing the roadblocks of
Yeah.
saying, you know, that's a silly thing in my life. Why am I
Yeah.
worried about that?
Yeah.
Right?
That's no, I like it. So you just kind of sit and, think about things and make yourself realize that maybe some of the stressful things in your life, they're probably least stressful in the grand scheme of things. Is that
You, I always say, are you going to remember this in 10 years?
yeah. Yeah.
Right?
No, I
And
like it. Yeah.
most of the time people won't.
Yeah, well, and it's interesting, like the whole spiritual thing, me versus you, it's different, but it works in very similar ways, right?
Mm,
It almost feels like your soul, the weight from some presence inside your body is being lifted, right? And I
yep.
think that's the feeling you're looking for. That is the renewal. And so if you're trying to find an activity, you need to find an activity that does that. Because another one I used to do was camping. There was
Yep.
another thing, getting away from technology and like stop having like like turn off your phone, stop having the constant pressures of society looming over you, and just like reset, be bored. I think that it's either in this book or something else I was reading that it was like we've lost the ability to be bored,
Yep.
and that's actually part of the problem that we're
So
all dealing with.
and again, I'm so glad you got me the updated version, right?
Yeah,
The 2025 version or whatever this came out, 2023,
yeah,
that had the Sean Covey editions because he
yeah.
does mention like
Okay, it
his
was
whole
in there.
afterwards for this chapter is about how technology
Yeah.
has
So it was
made
in there. Yeah.
this tougher, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, be bored,
Yeah.
right?
And that boredness, that is the spiritual, refreshment you're looking for, right?
Mm,
That's it right there. So you just got to figure out what it is that you okay doing while being bored. For me, it was either camping or going in a hot tub, in the stars. For you, it's just thinking about the stressful things in your life and letting them go, but like those are instances where we're kind of letting ourselves be bored and not needing something to entertain us, and it allows us to kind of process things in our heads.
I I mean, I'm gonna tell you a story. This was maybe like 2015, 2016. I
Yeah.
played a video game called The Beginner's Guide, which is in some ways a profoundly boring game.
Okay.
It's a hard game to recommend because you almost have to be in a certain mental state to even enjoy it.
Okay.
It's a bunch of tiny prototypes of a video game from like a developer um who doesn't really exist. They're a fake developer, right?
Okay.
Making all these tiny games that are like art pieces.
Yeah.
And the game's like 2 hours long. And I finished this game and I just had to turn off my computer, turn off my phone, and I walked outside and I just looked up at the night sky for like hours. And it was just one of those things that triggered me in a good way
Yeah. Yeah.
towards being like, what is the point of all this?
Yeah.
And I can't recommend the beginner's guide, but um
What's the
it
point
was a
of all
game
of
that
this?
hit me at the right
I feel
time,
like I need
right?
to look it up now.
Uh,
After this episode comes out, there's gonna be like a an influx of people downloading that game, I think.
yeah. But I
So
think sometimes being open to it, right? Being open to new experiences is part of the spiritual
mm,
nature
yeah,
of things.
yeah.
Opening yourself up to ideas.
Yeah. No, and so I'll kind of move us towards the end of this chapter which I think is like we kind of already kind of touched upon it, but he really does say balance is really important.
Mm.
And I think it's 100% true. I have a really good example. I stopped working out for like 8 months because I was getting sick all the time because the daughter started daycare, the usual story. And then I threw my back out. And because I threw my back out, I can no longer do like the physical things. And then I couldn't really do the spiritual things that I was doing, like going camping, which then led me down another spiral, and it spirals lower and lower and lower. And so that's a really good example of what he kind of says is if you don't balance these things and you let yourself go on some of these things, it can affect your other parts, which then you know, makes it so that then because now I'm super grumpy, am I going to practice habit 4 when I'm super grumpy? Like, no, I'm not going to want to listen to other people's needs. I have needs that need to be filled, right? And so it's a really good example of when your saw becomes dull and you lose your balance on some of these things, you're gonna obviously be way less effective at all of these other habits. And so
Mhm.
it's just so and vitally important to not only balance them, but then the next part, which is synergize them so that they get better and better and better so that you can practice these habits better and better. Right.
Yeah. Yeah, he taught you talked about the downward spiral, and he, on page 360, has the upward spiral,
Yeah.
right? He
Yep.
has this image of essentially learning and then committing to something and then doing something and then it continuously, right? Learn,
Yeah.
commit, and do
Yeah.
up and up. And yeah, the habits can go both ways, right?
Yeah.
You can break down, you can keep going. I
Yeah.
think the most important part of habit one is saying, wait a second, I can correct this.
Yes.
I
Yeah.
can do something to
Yeah.
change this, right?
Yeah.
This isn't out of my control. Yes, to some degree, my back or my health is out of my control, right?
Yeah.
But what can I do to fix that,
Yeah, I mean,
right?
it's not right. It's I can continuing doing PT and that will improve it. And then eventually I will get myself out of the hole I put myself into. And it'll just be a learning exercise that, because I think he says it in the afterwards. You fall off and you do a bad job on the habits. Like, so what? Get back on the horse. Like, that's just the way life is. Like, you're I think his father says something in here about. Oh, actually, it's in the afterwards, but I'll spoil it. He says he's not. He actually does a terrible job at these habits.
Uh-huh.
He basically says like no one is the master of these habits. Everyone is constantly trying to be better at them, and so
Mm,
don't think if you mess up on these habits on a day to day basis that like you're just terrible at it. Like no one is good at these. That's the point.
yeah, except for
Right.
that one influencer who is perfect at all these
Yeah.
habits and,
Yeah. Yeah.
wants to make sure the internet knows.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think he has a statement on 351 that I feel like is a nice sum, and it's
Mhm.
something I think about. But he says, character cannot be made except by a steady, long, continued process, right?
Yep.
And I often feel like this in so many ways. right? In small ways, like, when I play a video game or I'm
Yeah.
learning at work, I
Yeah.
know, like, I've had this situation in a video game so many times where, like, I run up against a boss or I'm not playing very well. I don't know
Yeah.
why I'm not doing very good at the game,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? And I go to sleep and I wake up the next day and that thing that I struggled with
Yeah.
is so much easier. I beat the
Yep.
boss. I go to the
Yeah.
next section.
Yeah.
This whole thing is not
Yeah.
actually as hard as it was, right?
Yeah.
I've had this situation at work all the time where I'm like, I don't understand how this all works together.
Mm.
And
Yep.
I struggle and I look at the documentation. None of it makes sense. I
Yeah.
go to sleep and the next day it makes a little bit more sense.
Yeah.
And the
Yeah.
next day it makes a little bit more
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah.
And part of that is realizing that, like, knowledge and learning and experience, all this stuff comes over time.
Yeah. Yep.
It's not like I can just cram it into one session and then I'm better
Mhm.
at it.
Oh,
No,
yeah.
your body will figure it out. It'll
Yeah.
just take time and you have to give
Yeah.
it the time, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting whenever I have to solve a puzzle that's, like, seems impossible to solve, right?
mhm.
Something at work that, like, no one else can solve it. It's seemingly impossible. The thing I keep telling myself is, like, nothing's impossible. Everything in life is so deterministic. You will figure it out eventually.
Mhm.
And you just need to give yourself time to figure it out. And that's what I always tell myself is like, I'm just missing some sort of piece, but guess what? I will figure it out eventually. It
Yep.
might take longer than I want it to. I just need to be patient, but I will solve this problem. It's a solvable problem. It is not impossible. If it was impossible, it wouldn't be a problem in the first place. you know, like that's what gets me through some of it. But there are so many times that it's like that you have to do that. You have to walk away. Like I'll be in the middle of a problem and then I'll just be like, okay, let's go to lunch. And people are like, but you're like trying to solve this. I'm like, no, I'm not going to solve it right now. And then
Yeah.
I'll be at lunch and then I'll just go, oh, I just figured it out, and then run back upstairs.
I
like,
mean, I I can't count the number of times. This has happened so much and I tell people about it all the time because it
yeah,
really is it happens to me many times a year
yeah,
where I will be at work. It'll be like 7 p.m. and I'll be struggling with something like, I need
yeah,
to finish this.
yeah,
I need to
yeah,
figure it out.
yeah,
Everything I do doesn't work. Right.
yeah,
And and nothing I do. I can keep going until midnight and nothing
yeah,
will work.
yeah,
And then I come back to work the next day. And during the time between when I leave my home and when I go to work, I'm like, oh, I should just try this.
yeah, yeah,
And boom, it solves the problem,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
But I needed that time away,
yeah,
right? I needed
yeah,
the time to actually process it and not have the pressure of the problem sitting on my
yeah,
back.
yeah,
And then you have some breakthrough moments,
yeah.
right?
Yeah, yeah, and that's just and that really shows why balance is so important. Having
Mhm.
that, because that's what you're kind of doing is you're like walking away from this like mentally straining situation and going like, I need to walk, I need to be social at lunch, I need to do something spiritual, just balance it out because then when you come back, you have that extra breathing room now. You're like, okay, I'm refreshed.
Yep.
And that I actually really liked the new insights, the first paragraph about Hamilton,
Yeah.
and talking Lin Manuel. I thought that was such a cool story that that Lin Manuel, he made for people who might not have the new book, but Lin Manuel made Hamilton. He's like a super famous person on Broadway. But before Hamilton, he came out with what
In
was
the
something
Heights.
in the
In the
Heights.
Heights. Yeah.
Yeah, and he is grinding his, I've heard he's like an insane person that works his butt off. I've always heard stories like that. And so he made that, he won a bunch of awards and he went on vacation. He's like, I need to get away. And while he was on vacation, he had a book with him and the book was about Alexander Hamilton. And it was then that he came up with the idea for the new hit that was Hamilton. And if it wasn't for him stepping away, taking a break, getting like that moment to breathe, Hamilton would have never been a thing, right?
Yeah.
And so that's a really great example of balance. You need that balance to figure out, the next best thing. You got to not squeeze the golden goose of the eggs,
Right, right. If he had sat down and said, "Okay, I need to work on the next thing," he wouldn't have
Yeah.
come up with
Nope.
Hamilton. It was
Never. Yeah.
because he took that break, right?
Yeah.
And I know to some people they say, "Wait, reading a book is a break," right? But
Yeah. Yeah. You're reading, no, even worse, reading a biography on Hamilton.
my wife bought that book because she was like, "I love Hamilton. I'm gonna like read the autobiography," and she's like, "This is a tough read. It's not
Yeah.
it's not an easy read."
And I think it's
But
funny too. The story of Hamilton is an example of not, if you don't balance, you are gonna have a bad time, right?
yeah, yeah,
And that's what he learned.
yep,
And then has all the other examples of like the presidents who like stepped away during times of war just to take a break, and in those times that's how they figured out how to solve some problems. And so it's just
yep.
interesting. It really is. It seems counterintuitive almost that you should walk away from a problem you're dealing with to refresh yourself, but it works. I mean, it's amazing.
My biggest point here is saying that all these activities that don't seem like work activities,
Yeah,
right? The activities where you're like getting together with coworkers for drinks, right?
yeah,
Or you're sitting down at lunch with coworkers, or
yeah,
you are going to a conference instead of doing work for that day,
yeah,
right? Or you're studying some new thing, working on something that's outside of your normal wheelhouse. These are work activities.
yeah,
They are not adjacent to work. They're not a side thing.
yeah,
Taking vacations is a work activity. I know
yeah,
you might not want to think about it like, oh, I'm on the clock right now on my vacation. But
yeah.
truly, like when you're on vacation, anything you do affects every other part of your life. You can't
Hmm.
think of these things as separate.
Yeah,
Um,
that's exactly it.
so yeah, it's all connected. That's kind of the point of these habits in a lot of ways, right?
Yeah,
Sharpening the saw is all about how we need to keep bettering ourselves and how all these habits feed into each other.
yeah,
And we can't neglect anything.
yeah,
Neglecting
yeah,
yourself doesn't allow you to,
yeah.
uh,
Neglecting one side is just a downward spiral into neglecting them all.
and improving one helps improve them all,
Yep,
right?
spiral upwards. Yeah.
Yep.
All right. Well, I think that ends the seventh habit. Um, we will have one more episode for our listeners out there. It's going to be the Inside Out chapter. So it's not a habit, it's more of a wrap up chapter. But with that being said, catch yourself up, read the Inside Out. Come join us in our final episode of our book club where we'll talk about the first episode all over again, where we had our thoughts on what this would be. We'll talk about the book in general, and we'll see if Josh still thinks if this is a hippy dippy book that that's not worth reading.
I'll save my thoughts for the final episode.
All right. Well, I'll talk to you.
Have a good one.
And that was our containerized conversation. I'm Jesse Caffarelli.
I'm Josh Warhurst. Have a great night.